Dude, this one is so good. Pace, he's on fire. He really has his stuff straight and really understands community. So I'm gonna play this just for some context, and then I'll give some more after.
Okay? People that have a lot of followers, a lot of audience, a lot of fans, they act like those people are their community. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, what do you think the difference between you and somebody else in terms of your community? I go, the difference is I actually know what the definition of the word community means. It's not an audience member. It's not somebody that follows me on Instagram. It's not somebody that follows me on TikTok. I would rather have 500 people in my community than 5 million followers on Instagram all day long. Okay? You have to understand that you have to have impact before you get income. Okay? If you don't stress out about solving other people's problems, then go run ads and go raise money. Okay? The world is going to change. And here's what happened. I was in the real estate industry, and I can tell you the real estate industry, just like everybody else's industry, especially being a contractor. When I was a contractor, contractors are really hard to collaborate with. You know how many times I tried to go to lunch with other contractors and go, who are you hiring? What appraiser are you using? What inspector are you using? Dude, I'm not giving you my information. It took me 7 years to build that information. And there was such a lack of collaboration. How many people, your industry lacks collaboration? That you feel like, man, I want to share with people. I can tell you, I came from the real estate industry. It's a bunch of blue crabs in a bucket. We all know the story of the blue crabs. The second one blue crab starts rising, the other ones reach up and try and tear it down. Okay?
So I'll stop it there. A couple cool points there. Like, he goes on to talk about how basically ChatGPT will never have community, and how people are going to be looking for more and more community as time goes on, because that's what's ultimately going to be lacking. And it's 100% the case. I couldn't agree with him more on that one. Um, and it's to the extent that he was talking about the blue crabs. So I was raising capital for funds, and got really involved in the whole fund world. Had a guy commit $600 million to a fund, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And really got introduced to high finance at the very highest level that you can get into, at least compared to what everybody else is aware of, and what high finance really is. And what I realized is the blue crab in a bucket, take that and multiply it by 100 in that world. It is extremely ugly, and uh, being exposed to that really made me think about where all of these guys that I was being exposed to, where their starting point was. And I talked about this in some other videos. But it's so important to really consider this, because even what Pace is talking about, and even how strong his community is, even the fact that they are all working together and they have the best community ever, like, what's really possible in the world as of right now it's not even possible to have a real community, except maybe one that I can think of. And the reason why is because of the starting point, the seed, right? Because our whole system right now, the starting point of it was separation. And so everything stemmed from that, including the money system, right? Including every single interaction that we have, even though what Pace is saying here is 100% right, and he's looking out for everybody's best interests. It doesn't matter, because he can't physically not be separate, and he can't not have his own self-interest, right? And it's not his fault. It's because of the starting point that he was brought into, being this system as a whole. So yeah, it's something to consider. I mean, really think about. I mean, you can boil it down, because that's very, like, can sound esoteric, large, big picture stuff. But if you think about it in terms of, think about a broken relationship or even a good relationship. and what the starting point of that relationship was. If it was based in an agreement, right? It's a very easy to understand how that relationship will unfold because you can hold each other accountable for the agreement. So the starting point, what were those principles, right? Or whatever was in that agreement. So when you take that and then compare it to a relationship where the starting point did not have an agreement, there was no principles, there was no rules. It was just, hey, I love you. Let's start this agreement. Let's have a relationship based off sex, based off emotion, based off whatever initially got you into the relationship. Without the principles, the rest of the relationship has nothing to fall back on. And so it's constantly only falling onto what it started with, which is the emotions, right? Which is something that is not even concrete. And so those relationships will ultimately always end in separation, suffering. I mean, they can be together for the rest of their life, but there's still not an eye to eye. There's no principles to fall back on. There's no fulfillment really in the relationship. And because of that starting point. So now take it back and use a plant. And a plant could be another analogy, right? So the seed, the starting point of that plant was an apple, right? It was an apple tree. That's programmed into the seed, and that's why it grows into an apple tree, right? Doesn't change halfway through, doesn't decide to be an orange tree, doesn't decide to be something else, doesn't, not feel so good. So it decides it doesn't want to grow that day. It just is all programmed into that seed. So the same point about community, even even though the community here might be based in, hey, we want to do collaboration, the overall system that it's within is the money system, which is I win, you lose, right? Someone wins and someone loses, and that's always the case, and that will create more and more in separation. So that's why you see more and more of people, less people at the top, more people at the bottom, and that will increase, right? So there'll be even less people at the top, and there'll be even more people at the bottom. And that'll keep happening over and over and over and over until we fix this system. And so then the question is, okay, how do you solve that, right? Um, and this is the last thing I'll leave here. I was just having a conversation with a guy that was homeless. He's now doing pretty well in business. Has been able to get off the streets, get himself clean. He was doing drugs, all kind of stuff, and now he's running, a pretty good business. Nothing crazy, but pretty good business. And he was like, "Yeah, my biggest thing is I want to give back. I want to be able to give back because I was homeless. So the big thing I'm focused on is food and shelter because I didn't have food and it sucked, and I didn't have shelter and it was horrible." And what I asked him was, "So when you were in that position, what got you out of, like, how did you even get out of being homeless?" And he said, well, his girlfriend at the time said that she was going to leave him if he didn't figure it out and, get his act together and figure out what was going on, stop doing the drugs, all this stuff. And he didn't change. And she had told him many times before. This time he didn't change again. And she left. And that's when it broke him enough to the extent of he came to this realization that, wow, I need to make a change. I'm I'm doing XYZ like this, and that is causing me to be in this situation. If only I were to do this, I could get out of this situation. And so then I looked at him and I asked him, and I was like, okay, cool. So did the bread give you that realization? Like, did you have food, and then all of a sudden, because you got the piece of bread, you were then not homeless? He's like, no. Okay, so did someone put a roof over your head, and then all of a sudden you were just not homeless and you got out of it? And he said, no. I said, exactly. So really what the the solution was there is you just came to a new understanding, meaning you just educated yourself on a new perspective or something new that you had not seen before, right? And so I say all that because at the root cause of all of this is education. And until we all come to the understanding
So here's what
of
I recognize in my
an education that is streamlined around absolving suffering and being equal and one, we are going to keep the separation increasing more and more and more. And so that's what it boils back to. We first have to educate everyone to see that there is a problem. Once there is a problem that, hey, we're all on the streets right now and we need to stop doing drugs, then we can take the next step to get out of it. So, something to consider. It's a little long one, but appreciate you guys watching. If you guys are interested in any of this, subscribe. I have some links down there. You can reach out to me. I love talking about this, and it's not even something I love talking about. It's something that needs to be talked about and has to be talked about more. So, happy to chat. See ya.